Hi friends, welcome to A Wonderful Sheep and welcome to this flip through of my reading journal for the month of June. I hope you're doing well wherever you are. It is officially the start of rainy season and it's been raining all day and the forecast says rain for the rest of the week, so I figured I would just film this now because we're not going to get any better light this week. So here's my cover page. Clearly I gave up. I was not inspired. I just wanted to get this journal done. You know, you just have some of those days when you're not feeling inspired, so I just made a simple cover page and a bookshelf. Very different in terms of like style from May. May I loved. I was super inspired for May, but June, this is what we're working with for June. The book's borrowed and progress bar spread. Don't look at this yet. I don't think I'll continue this in July just because it's not serving its purpose anymore. I was interested in like checking how many books I borrowed versus what I read when I started these spreads, but now I don't really care. Like, it doesn't cost money to borrow books, and if I don't get to them or if I don't finish them, that doesn't really matter. And then at the beginning of the month, I did try to journal a little bit about the books as I was picking them up, and then that lasted all of one page, as you can see, and True Love Experiment was excellent. I actually do have a Bookstagram account that I've sort of been writing about the books more in detail, but I really enjoyed the True Love Experiment. I have BTS at the bottom here because Christina, Laure, the authors of the True Love Experiment, are ARMY as well, and this book was basically an ode to readers of the romance genre and also fangirls. Like, there's a lot that I think if you enjoy romance or if you are ARMY, you will appreciate about this book. So I do recommend that. Really enjoyed the True Love Experiment. And then these couple of pages are spreads that I want to be filling in for the rest of the year as I finish these comics books by Masta Miri, who is a Japanese illustrator and writer, and her books are translated into Korean as well. And I've just been enjoying reading her like graphic novels, I guess, comic books. They're very simple, but they're just very heartwarming and just like lovely. So I've been enjoying reading these. I have a couple spreads on her series. And then I made a spread for the Lady Sherlock series because this was probably the highlight of my June reading, is starting the series. Really enjoyed reading the series. I still have a couple books to go. But if you've been following this channel, you've heard me speak about Sherry Thomas. I started reading her historicals first, and then I moved on to her Hidden Blade duology, which I actually did read the second book in that duology. It was very good, My Beautiful Enemy. I want to reread that duology again at some point because I think there's a lot of details that I missed in the first read through, but really enjoying Sherry Thomas. And after I read her historicals, I moved on to the Lady Sherlock series, which, as you can tell, or you can infer from the title, it's Sherlock Holmes, but reimagined with a woman. So Sherlock is actually Charlotte Holmes, and she pretends to be Sherlock Holmes. Basically, she makes up a fake brother who is like an invalid, and so she acts as the eyes and ears for her brother, Sherlock Holmes. But in fact, Charlotte is the one who's doing all the sleuthing and detectiving, and instead of Watson, there's a Mrs. John Watson, who is her sort of not necessarily assistant, more like her like bookkeeper and sort of benefactor and friend. And there's a whole crew of really fun characters in the Sherlock Holmes as Charlotte Holmes series, and I really enjoy it. There's a very fun aristocratic love interest as well, and they're just drawing out the will they won't they get together for over several books. But yeah, I really liked Lady Sherlock series, and Sherry Thomas's writing is excellent. So if you would like a mystery series and you also like historical fiction, I do recommend this series. So getting into the wrap up, I did talk about Sherry Thomas, and then a couple historicals. I read Gentle Rogue by Johanna Lindsey because I think it was recommended or referenced at some point on the Fated Mates podcast. And speaking of Fated Mates, I read Knockout by Sarah MacLean, who is the co-host of the podcast, and I enjoyed that. Actually, I listened to it on audio, and it was narrated by Mary Jane Wells. And then I have a little sci-fi section here because towards the middle of the month I ran into a bit of a reading slump, and I thought I would change it up by changing genres. So I picked up Project Hail Mary by Weir, which was actually really fun. Like, I remember reading The Martian years ago and I enjoyed it. And so I picked this up and it was really fun from the beginning. There's like a thriller aspect to it because this man wakes up on a spaceship millions of miles from home. He doesn't know why he's there. He has no memory of who he is. And so the chapters alternate between like flashbacks of his memory of his life before and how he got on that spaceship, and then problem solving how he can fulfill his mission and save his life as he's the only one alive on board the spaceship. So this was really fun. I recommend. And then for fantasy, I picked up The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. This was also just a random find from the library, and I saw the blurb on the front cover said it was recommended by Sarah J. Maas. So I was like, I'll check it out. And it was a good read. I almost gave up in the middle because I wasn't really into it, but the story has like several characters in different locations. After the middle of the book, the different characters and stories sort of start to merge together and it becomes more interesting. So I did finish it and I did enjoy it, and I plan to read the sequel. And let's see what else. Like I did in May, I believe. I won't talk about every single book. For fiction, I finally read a Sally Rooney book. I picked up Normal People and I enjoyed it. There were several passages I highlighted because her observations of like life and relationships were really interesting to me. The writing style is also very interesting because there were no quotes to delineate when people were speaking from the rest of the writing. So that was an adjustment at first, but then I got used to it. And there were a lot of like really beautiful passages in it that I highlighted. And then we have some orange arrows at the bottom because we ran out of space and I didn't feel like doing a whole another spread. So we go back to a little empty space I had here, the continuation of the June wrap-up and the rest of the rom-coms, I guessed. Ali Hazelwood's new book, Not in Love. It was different for sure from her other books. It wasn't as like snappy and fun as her other books, so yeah, I don't know. I don't think it was for me necessarily. I didn't like connect as much with the characters or the story. Oh, and then You Belong With Me, which is by Mhairi McFarlane. It's not in here because I made a spread. I made a whole spread because I found out this book was coming out this month. Mhairi McFarlane is one of my favorite romance or lit fic type writers. I read most of her recent releases last summer, and then I hadn't been reading her backlist, and then I found out randomly. I just like looked her up wondering if she had a new book, and she did. She had one coming out in June 2024, so I made this spread back in April in commemoration of the new book. It's actually You Belong With Me, which is a sequel to Who's That Girl, and I had read Who's That Girl back in April, I think, and then I listened to the sequel and I really enjoyed it. I definitely like her like more recent releases over the few books I've read that are her early books, but this sequel, I think, since it's written in her like her style now, I really liked it. So if you haven't read anything by Mhairi McFarlane, any of these books that you see on the bottom, I do recommend. Just Last Night is really good. I think this is my favorite, If I Never Met You, but also You Belong With Me is really good. Obviously it's a sequel though, so better to read it after you read Who's That Girl. But yeah, favorite books of the month probably Mhairi McFarlane, and then definitely Sherry Thomas's My Beautiful Enemy, and all of the Lady Sherlock books I think are my favorites from June, as well as The True Love Experiment. And that is it. That is June in books. Thank you so much for watching. We are halfway through the year. I hope your year is going well. I don't think I'm going to be able to fit all of 2024 in this book, but we'll see. Let me know what you're reading. Let me know what books you've been enjoying, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.